Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So today we're getting into something pretty fundamental, wouldn't you say? A philosophical question that really sits at the core of, well, being human.
Absolutely. We're looking at sources dealing with this internal guide. People call it different things, right? The moral law, law of human nature, rule of decent behavior.
Yeah, all those terms. And what we want to do, our sort of mission here, is to really dig into why it's not what people often think it is.
Exactly. We're tackling two big ideas, two common misconceptions head on. First, that this moral law is, just an instinct like hunger or fear.
And second,
And second, that it's purely a social construct, something humans just made up, invented, like the rules of chess or something.
right. And the sources you provided give us some great ways to think about this, using analogies that hopefully make it much clearer for you, the listener, moving beyond just abstract definitions.
Okay, let's jump into that first one then. This idea that morality is just instinct. You hear people say that, like, oh, helping others, that's just our herd instinct.
Or social instinct, developed over millennia. Sounds plausible on the surface.
It does. But the argument draws a really sharp line right away. An instinct.
Yeah.
Well, that's a desire, a strong want. Like you said, hunger or self-preservation, maybe mother love, forces that push you.
But the moral law feels different. It's not really a want in the same way, is it? It's more like a feeling you ought to do something.
Precisely. That ought. It's there whether you feel the desire or not. Sometimes it even tells you to act against your strongest desire. That's the key distinction.
And the classic example they use really brings this home. Think about hearing someone cry for help, someone in danger.
Yeah. Instantly, you feel these two often very strong impulses pulling you.
One is that pull to help, the herd instinct maybe. You want to assist the person in trouble.
But then there's usually another one, right? Often quite powerful, the instinct to protect yourself. Run away, stay safe. Self-preservation.
Okay, so you've got these two instincts potentially at war, but then there's something else involved.
Yes. A third thing. Something inside you that seems to be, well, judging between those two instincts. It's telling you, look, you should push down that urge to run, and you should act on the urge to help.
And that's the thing, they can't just be another instinct. Because how can the thing doing the judging be one of the very instincts it's judging?
Exactly. If morality was just the herd instinct, why would it win out when self-preservation, which is often way stronger, is screaming at you to stay safe? There'd be no internal reason for the weaker impulse to take charge.
Someone listening might think, well, couldn't it be some kind of blend, a mix of the two?
That's a fair question. But the moral law doesn't really feel like a compromise, does it? A compromise might be, I don't know, shouting for help from a distance.
Right, finding a middle path.
But the moral law often demands you suppress one impulse entirely, usually the self-interested one, and go all in on the other, the one based on duty or helping someone else. It's not about finding a comfortable balance.
The piano analogy here is just brilliant, I think. It makes it so clear.
It really does. The instincts are like the keys on the piano. You've got lots of them, different notes, different desires.
But the moral law, that's the sheet music. It's the tune you're supposed to play. It tells you which key to press and when and maybe how hard.
Yeah. And the sheet music isn't itself a key, it's the instruction. And crucially, that tune often tells us to play the note, the impulse that feels weaker. You probably want safety much, much more than you want to dive into icy water to save someone.
But the tune says, play the help note now.
And sometimes it's even stranger. Sometimes the moral law tells us we need to boost an instinct.
What do you mean?
Well, maybe your natural pity or desire to help isn't strong enough in a situation. You know you ought to feel more or do more. So the moral law tells you to, work on it. Wake up your imagination, focus on the other person's suffering, consciously strengthen the herd instinct.
Ah, I see. So the thing telling the instinct to wake up can't be the instinct itself. It has to be something above it, directing it.
It has to be the director, the conductor. Which leads us to this pretty radical conclusion in the source material. None of our impulses, not a single one, is always good or always aligned with what's right.
That really does shift things. We tend to think, mother love, good. Patriotism, good. Aggression, bad, mostly. Sex drive needs controlling.
Right, we put them in boxes. But the argument is that the moral law, the tune, might require any impulse to be either encouraged or suppressed, depending on the situation.
So, well, yeah, maybe restraining aggression is common. A soldier in battle might have a duty to stir up his fighting instinct.
Or a married person might have a duty, for the sake of their relationship, to actively encourage their sexual impulse at times, not just restrain it.
And conversely, those good impulses, they aren't always the right note to play either.
No, think about it. If a mother's love for her child makes her cheat another child out of something they deserve, the moral law says, hold on, restrain that love impulse, prioritize fairness here.
Or patriotism turning into cruelty towards other nations.
Exactly. Every key, every impulse is right sometimes and wrong other times. The moral law decides when.
Okay, so if that's the case, what's the big takeaway for us, practically speaking?
This is crucial. The source really emphasizes this. The most dangerous thing you can possibly do is pick one single impulse, even one that seems noble like love or compassion, and make it your absolute unquestionable guide.
Why is that so dangerous? It sounds good, doesn't it? Just follow love.
It sounds good, but think about the tune analogy again. The moral law includes multiple themes: justice, honesty, fairness, as well as compassion. If you decide love for humanity is the only thing that matters, and you ignore, say, justice,
Then what happens?
well, you might start justifying breaking promises, or maybe even faking evidence in a court case, telling yourself it's for the greater good of humanity.
Right, because you're prioritizing that one love impulse over the justice or truth impulses.
And the argument is, by doing that, by playing only one note constantly and ignoring the rest of the tune, you actually end up becoming, well, cruel and treacherous. You destroy the harmony.
So the moral law isn't an impulse. It's the director, the manager, the harmonizer of all the impulses. It keeps the whole orchestra playing together properly.
Well put. It tells the whole orchestra how to play the symphony.
Okay. That clears up the instinct idea pretty thoroughly. But what about the other big one? The idea that it's all just social convention, something we learn from society.
Right, the it's just education argument. And you can see why people think this because, we do learn morality from parents, teachers, culture. You wouldn't know these rules if you grew up totally isolated.
That seems like strong evidence, doesn't it?
It seems like it.
Yeah.
But the source makes a really sharp point here. How we learn something doesn't determine what that thing is.
Okay, explain that.
Think about the multiplication tables. We all learned those in school, right?
Yeah.
Probably because teachers made us drill them.
Definitely. I wouldn't have learned them otherwise.
Exactly. A child alone on a desert island wouldn't know that 3 times 3 is 9. But does that mean 3 times 3 is 9 is just a human invention? Something we could have decided was 7 or 10.
No, obviously not. Math feels real, objective.
Right. It's a truth we discover, not one we invent. So the way we learn it through teaching doesn't make it less real.
So the distinction is between things that are genuinely just conventions, things we did invent and could change.
Like which side of the road to drive on, we decided that. We could vote to change it tomorrow. It's arbitrary, a convention.
Versus things that are real truths like mathematics that we just learned about.
Precisely. And the fundamental question then becomes, which group does the moral law belong to? Is it like the rule of the road, or is it like multiplication?
And the material gives us, what, 2 main reasons to think it's like math? That it's objective?
Yeah, 2 pretty strong arguments. The first one looks at consistency across cultures.
Okay, people often say morals are wildly different everywhere.
They do, and skeptics love pointing that out. But the argument here is, if you actually look closely, the differences aren't nearly as huge as people think. Underneath, you find the same basic law running through pretty much all of them.
Like what? What's consistent?
Well, things like prohibitions against murder without cause, valuing honesty within the group, some sense of fairness, protecting the young. You find these core ideas almost everywhere, even if the application has variations.
Whereas conventions can be totally different, like clothing styles. Ancient Egyptian clothes have zero resemblance to modern suits, but that difference doesn't mean anything fundamental.
Exactly. Conventions can vary wildly. Morality seems to have a much more stable core. But okay, that's maybe debatable for some. The second argument is, I think, even more powerful.
Which is?
It's the whole idea of moral progress.
Ah, right. Progress implies moving towards something better.
Yes. Not just changing, but changing for the better. If morality was just a convention, like fashion, then saying abolishing slavery was better makes no more sense than saying modern jeans are better than Roman togas. They're just different.
But we don't really believe that, do we? We genuinely think some moral changes were improvements.
We absolutely do. We talk about moral reformers, people who saw things more clearly, who understood right and wrong better than the society around them. Think about the civil rights movement or women's suffrage.
The moment you say one set of moral ideas is better or more advanced or more humane than another.
Like preferring, say, modern human rights ideas to Nazi ideology or civilized morality to what might be called savage morality.
You're automatically admitting you're measuring both against some kind of standard, a real standard.
A standard that exists outside of both sets of ideas. It has to be independent for you to be able to say one is closer to it than the other. If morality was just whatever a culture approves of, then there'd be no better or worse, just different.
The New York analogy fits well here.
It does. Why can your idea of New York be truer or more accurate than mine?
Because New York is a real, physical place. It exists whether we think about it or not, and our ideas can be compared to the actual city.
Exactly. If there wasn't a real New York, comparing our ideas would be meaningless. Similarly, if there wasn't a real moral law, saying one culture's morality is better than another's would just be cultural preference, like saying you prefer jazz to classical.
So the very fact we argue about moral progress, that we believe improvement is possible, points strongly towards an objective standard of right and wrong.
It really forces your hand, logically speaking.
Okay, but hold on. What about things that look like massive moral changes? Things that people point to all the time.
Right, we need to address that because it's where a lot of the confusion comes from. The crucial point here is distinguishing between changes in moral principles and changes in beliefs about facts.
Facts versus principles.
Okay. A lot of what looks like a moral difference between, say, us today and people centuries ago isn't actually a disagreement about the core moral rule itself. It's a difference in what they believed about how the world works.
The witch trials example is used here, right?
Yes, it's a stark one. We don't execute witches today. Someone might say, see? Huge moral progress. We're so much more humane.
But the argument isn't that our morality changed fundamentally on that point.
No. The argument is that our knowledge changed. We simply don't believe witches, in the sense of people selling their souls for supernatural destructive powers, actually exist.
So the underlying moral principle hasn't necessarily shifted.
Probably not. The source suggests that if we genuinely believed, as people did then, that there were individuals using demonic power to secretly harm and kill their neighbors, well, we'd likely still agree that such people deserved severe punishment, maybe even death.
The core principle that deliberately harming innocent people is terribly wrong and should be stopped, that remains the same.
Exactly. What changed was the belief about the facts of the matter. Do such people exist, and can they do these things? Our science, our understanding of the world, changed. Not necessarily the fundamental moral judgment about malicious harm.
It's like the mousetrap analogy they end with.
Right. You wouldn't call someone more humane just because they stopped setting mousetraps if the only reason they stopped was they came to believe there were no mice in the house anymore.
Their attitude towards mice hasn't changed, just their belief about whether mice are present.
Mm-hmm. So distinguishing factual beliefs from moral principles is absolutely key when comparing different times or cultures. Much apparent moral difference dissolves when you do that.
Okay, this has been quite a journey through these ideas. Let's try and wrap this up for the listener. What's the core takeaway from this deep dive?
I think it boils down to this. You might look at the world, see all the different behaviors and rules, and initially think, wow, there's no real standard here, it's all relative.
That's a common starting point.
It is, but then the moment you start talking about those differences, the moment you use words like progress or better or fairer or condemn something as unjust or wrong, you're actually proving the opposite.
You're proving you do believe in a real standard to measure against. An objective, independent standard of decent behavior must exist for those comparisons to make any sense at all.
Exactly. And that standard isn't just another instinct jostling for position. It's the director, the conductor, the tune itself.
Which leads us to that final, quite provocative thought you flagged from the material.
Yes. If the moral law is the tune, the director, and our instincts are the keys, the instruments, what does it mean that this tune, this director, so often seems to tell us to suppress the impulse that serves us, self-preservation, safety, comfort?
In favor of the impulse that serves others, the herd instinct, helping, fairness, even when the self-serving impulse feels much stronger.
Right. What does that consistent pattern, that structure within the moral law itself suggest about the purpose of the tune? Or maybe even the composer?
That definitely leaves you with something to chew on. Food for thought indeed.